Hello, ladies and gentlemen of Algebra 2. You are in 8-4, so you should be about halfway through Unit 8, approximately. So today we're talking about the roots, talking about nth roots and simplifying radicals, and not just your regular square roots, but going more in depth to third roots, fourth roots, fifth roots. So let's take a look. Volume of a sphere is found by doing this. Figure out what the radius of the sphere is if the volume is 225. So 225, so 225 equals 4/3 pi r cubed. So now solving this using some algebra, so I'll divide by pi first. So 225 divided by pi is going to be 71.6197. So now to get rid of this, I'm going to multiply by 3/4. What that does is 3 cancels, 4 cancels. So I'm left with r to the third is going to be equal to 53.7148. So then I don't take the square root, I'm going to take the third root or the cube root. So I want to take that to the cube root, and the short, easy way to do this is in your calculator. If you raise it, and then in parentheses go 1 divided by 3. So if I raise that to the 1/3 power, that is the equivalent of taking the third root of that number. Okay, so if I put 53.7148 raised to the 1/3 power, I get 3.7731. So that's going to be the radius of this sphere. This is going to be a big helper to you. So a squared equals 16. So this is going to be a just square root of 16 is going to be 4. So the square root of a squared is just going to be a. So negatives underneath the square root, we've got, so the square root of negative 16, that would be does not exist, all right? That would be imaginary. I mean, you could say 4i, but we're not talking about that right now. So if a cubed equals 27, so the third root of 27 would equal a. So the cube root of 27 is 3. So in negative roots with an odd root like 3, you can still do this, okay? You can still take negative 27. This is actually going to be negative 3 because negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 will give you a negative 27, and that's 3 of them. So the fourth root of 81 is 3. So, and again, it's even. So if this number is even, you can't do a negative, okay? So that would be does not exist. Now, realize that this is a fourth root, so if it was a square root, you could try 9, but that wouldn't work either. But the fourth root, you would want to say 3, but negative doesn't work. So a to the fifth equals 32, so that'd be like the fifth root of a to the fifth equals a. So the fifth root of 32 is 2, so it's saying 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 5 times. So this is actually going to be negative 2. So the nth root of b is a. So that's this last one. Basically, your nth root gives you a. All right? So, and for here, for my final rule, you know, it's if it's an odd n, you can have a negative number. If it's an even n, that answer does not exist, okay? It's imaginary. So what I'm looking for is how many times do I have to multiply a number to get this number, or this number, or this number, all right? And after a little practice, you start to kind of see. So start off easy. So start off here. So we look, if I break this apart and go square root of 25, square root of x to the fourth, you know, square root of 25, that's 5 squared. X to the fourth, I'm actually going to break apart into x squared and x squared. Square root of 5 squared is 5. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of x squared is x. So that's going to be 5x squared. Over here, I have negative y squared plus 2 to the 8th. All right, now here's kind of what I want you to think about. So this is just your typical standard square root. All right, leave this negative out front. All right, and I'm raising this whole thing to the 8th power underneath. Well, square root as a exponent is actually like saying to the 1/2 power. So another way to say this would be y squared plus 2 raised to the 8th, and then that thing is going to be raised to the 1/2. Okay, so I've taken this whole part that's underneath, and I'm raising it to the 1/2, which is like taking a square root. Okay, so now, following exponent rules, if you remember, when I raise power to a power, I actually have to multiply those. So I have y squared plus 2, and I'm going to take 8 times 1/2. So that's going to be negative y squared plus 2 to the 4th. That's going to be my answer. Now, I could completely multiply it out, but that would just be really messy, and I would just put a negative out front of it anyway. So I'm just going to call that my answer. All right, so here's where things get a little bit trickier. Now you're looking for a 5th root. All right, so if I break this apart, which is not a bad idea, if I break it apart like so, what I'm looking for is the 5th root of 32, the 5th root of x to the 15th, and the 5th root of y to the 20th. Okay, so kind of one way I want to think about this is when I look at the number, what number multiplied by itself 5 times gives you 32? Well, if I play around a little bit, that is the same thing as saying 2 to the 5th. All right, so then, think about kind of what I said before. 2 to the 5th, the 5th root, this is kind of like saying 2 to the 5th, and then if it's the 5th root, is like raising it to a power of 1/5. And then if I follow my rules of exponents, power to a power, I multiply those two things. 5 times 1/5 is going to be just 2 to the 1st, or just 2. So then if I follow that same rule here, x to the 15th raised to the 1/5, well, that's like saying 15 times 1/5, right? Another way to say this would be, this is going to be just x to the 3rd. All right, if I do this a little bit different way, following rules of exponents, 5th root of, well, x to the 3rd to the 5th will give me 15, so that will give me the same answer. So I've got 2, and I've got x to the 3rd. Following the same rule, this is going to be y to the 4th raised to the 5th power. 5th root, that's just going to be y to the 4th. So my final answer is going to be 2 x to the 3rd, y to the 4th. Square root of -9, if technically it would be does not exist, but what you could say is that this would just, you could break it apart like we have before and just say, you know what, this would be -1, this is going to be a +9, this is going to be I, this is going to be plus or minus 3, so my answer would be plus or minus 3I. Either one of those ways would work. So here, 81 y to the 6th, square root of 81, square root of y to the 6th. So square root of 81 is going to be plus or minus 9. Square root of y to the 6th. Remember, this is kind of like saying y to the 6th to the 1/2. So that's going to be y to the 3rd. So there's my answer, plus or minus 9y to the 3rd. For number 6, so 6th root of 729, 6th root of x to the 30, 6th root of y to the 18. So first things first, 729, I'm going to have to play around with that. And this is actually 3 raised to the 6th power. 729 is. So these 6's kind of cancel out. I'm just left with 3. For x to the 30th to the 6th root of that, basically I'm going to take 30 divided by 6. So that's just going to be x to the 5th. Here with the y, I'm going to take 18 divided by 6. And that's just going to give me y third. So all I'm doing is dividing it. For 7, 7's pretty easy. All right? 8th root of x to the 8th. So it's saying what multiplied by itself 8 times gives me x to the 8th. Well, that's just x. For 8, I want to do 4th root of square root of 81. All right, then I want to do the 4th root of a plus 1 to the 12th. All right, 4th root of 81. 81 is actually 3 to the 4th, so that's just going to be 3. 4th root of a plus 1 to the 12th is going to be, well, I'm going to take 12 divided by 4, and that's going to be a plus 1 parentheses to the 3rd power. So this would be a simplified way of saying that right there. So 9, hopefully you're starting to kind of pick this up. Hopefully it's not too brain breaking for you. So you have square root of 100, square root of x to the 10th. So square root of 100 plus or minus 10. Square root of x to the 10th is just going to be x to the 5th, right there. Square root of 64, square root of y plus 1 to the 14th. So you're going to go plus or minus 8. And then this cut in half is just going to be y plus 1 to the 8th. There's my answer right there. So let's take a look. Distance a planet is from the sun is a function of the length of its year. The formula d equals cube root of 6t squared, where d is your distance from the planet, from the sun in millions of miles. T is the number of Earth days in the planet's year. The year on Mars is 687 Earth days. How far is the sun from Mars? So what's your distance if you take the cube root of 6 times 687 squared? So 687 squared is going to be a really big number, times another 6 is going to be a really, really big number. So you're looking for the cube root of 283.1814. And once again, like I said, in your calculator, all you got to do is raise that to the power of 1/3. So if you take 283.1814 raised to the 1/3 power, that's going to be 141.478. So that means this is in millions of miles. So that means that Mars is 141 millions of miles, 0.478 millions of miles away from the sun. So the stone spheres of Costa Rica are made by forming, I don't know how to say that word, boulders into spheres. One of the stone spheres has a volume of this. What is the diameter of the stone sphere? So I have this equaling 4/3 pi r cubed. So divide by pi. And that gives me 36,000. So then I'm going to multiply by 3/4. Cancel, cancel. So times, that will give me 27,000. So then third root that, which means raise it to the 1/3 power. So my radius is going to be 30, but that's not what they're asking for. They want the diameter, so that's going to be 60. That's my answer. All right, play around with this. Let your calculator help you where it can. Come talk to me with questions.